Time's up. Just thank you. Representative Sampson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. I hadn't initially intended to speak on the bill before us, but just after listening to some of the debate, I feel compelled to offer some thoughts. And while I know the bill contains a lot of different elements, I'm going to speak to what seems to be the hot topic this afternoon, which is the subject of racial preferences. I was recently invited to something called a junto. And for folks that don't know, a junto is something that was created by Ben Franklin. And basically, it is nothing more than a group of citizens getting together, and he referred to it as a club for mutual improvement. And basically, the idea was that if you got some folks from town together to discuss the issues of the day, you could put the most intelligent minds together and maybe come up with solutions to the problems that face them. And I have a very, very good friend who I would call a patriot and someone who is very, very interested in American history. And one of his efforts in his life is to give a rebirth to some of these ideas and philosophies that have seemed to wane in recent years. And because I'm a good friend of his, he invited me to a junto in honor of Ben Franklin. And the subject of this particular junto was the American dream. And he had broken it down into a whole bunch of different things. What is the American dream? Is it alive and well today? What is the dream? Is it an idea? Is it an ideal? Is it a place? And all of these topics generated considerable discussion. And I will tell you that I learned a great deal that evening. And, you know, I would point out that the folks that were invited were a tremendously diverse group. There were folks that have considerable experience in all areas of our society, whether it be government or business. There were people of different ethnic groups. There were people of different ages. It was a very, very diverse group. And everyone had their own perspective. I would also just make another note about that group. The thing that was interesting for me, probably more than anything, because when I get into a typical political discussion, it ends up falling along ideological lines about Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, and so on. But during this discussion, there was none of that. Absolutely none of that. There were no R's, there were no D's, there were no black, no white, no Hispanic. We were all Americans. And I walked away from that thinking that was a tremendous lesson for me, and it's a tremendous lesson for the people in this chamber, that that's how other people outside of this building consider themselves. They consider themselves as Americans first. Anyway, we exchanged stories about our own individual history, about our own personal struggles, about our individual families and how they got to this country, why they came here. At the end of the discussion, though, I think the one thing that we all agreed on was that as individuals, the one thing that we wanted more than any other single thing was to be judged on our own personal merit. And we all agreed that while you could define the American dream in a lot of ways, the most important aspect of the American dream was the concept of opportunity. Now, I know our history. The good chairman of the Judiciary Committee brought it up numerous times that our history in this country is not perfect. But I will say that I reject the notion that somehow our country has any evil tendencies whatsoever. There have been evil acts, even evil people maybe. But over time, the concept of America is not evil. It is a pure and beautiful thing. And I think the concept of America and the American dream was first laid out in our Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What did they mean when they said equal? They did not mean equal outcome. They didn't mean that everyone would be successful. They didn't mean that everyone would have 2 cars and a dog and a white picket fence and a house. What they meant is that people would have equal opportunity to achieve and become whatever they were capable of on their own through their own efforts and merit. A lot of the rhetoric that has been surrounding the most recent events that have led to this legislation before us, whether it was Ferguson or Baltimore or the Confederate flag issue recently or South Carolina, have a lot of rhetoric that surrounds the word justice. My problem, I guess, with the concept of justice is that if you're going to use legislation like this that defines people as to what group they belong to, you are defying the concept of justice. Justice is blind. And our system of laws and government from the very beginning has been all about the individual, not the group you belong to. It's about each one of us as a single person and the fact that each one of us was granted certain rights by God for our mere existence, and that no government should stand in the way of our ability to exercise those laws. This concept was reaffirmed again in the 14th Amendment, in the Equal Protection Clause. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. These concepts have existed in our system of laws ever since. And I will say that hearing the language contained in this bill, Mr. Speaker, I couldn't help but notice with these mentions of promoting and preference that it sounds a lot different than those concepts. I'm going to be voting no today, Mr. Speaker, not because I don't want us to achieve the dream of true equal opportunity, but because this is not the way to get there. We need to really cease pointing out our individual differences and rather begin judging one another on the content of our character and the merit of our actions and our efforts. I entered politics, Mr. Speaker, because of my personal appreciation for the idea that is America, the one that I just spoke of. I am here because of the American dream. This legislation before us, Mr. Speaker, is not it. Thank you.